workshop on last year, we initiated the Charter Review Committee. Each commissioner was able to recommend someone to be on the committee. And from that, we were able to formalize that committee, and they've been working over the past year to bring to us with recommendations they have for the revised charter. And so today, we're not voting on any recommendations. We're hearing what their report is and having any questions that we have for them at this time. And so we're going to turn it over to our chairperson, Mr. George Hines, and his committee at this time.
Okay. Good afternoon, Commissioner, Attorney. I'm here to represent the committee. My name is George Hines. I'm a 25-year resident of Lynn Haven, retired military. I want the rest of them to introduce themselves so you know I didn't do it alone. Go ahead, man.
Jerry Parker, 20-year resident. My occupation is physical therapist assistant.
Jim Frischkorn, 15-year resident, retired military, working at Tyndall Air Force Base.
Linda Mishler, 17 and a half years. This go around in Lynn Haven, but my first home was bought in Lynn Haven in 1981. So that was when I was originally a resident of Lynn Haven.
And could you tell us which member is absent from the committee today?
The representative that's representing Mr. Warren, if Mr. Warren is not here right now, Ms. Joanne, she's not here. She's also a part of the committee.
All right, thank you.
The committee was derived and conceived by the commissioner and the mayor came together. Each representative at the tables here picked a citizen of community to represent them during the briefings and during the testing and the training that we did. What we did was started last June, and we went through every inch of the charter, word by word, line by line. And we came up with a plan and a referendum proposal that we want to present to you today. And what we did was, right here it tells you what the objective was, what we was trying to accomplish, and the type of things we discussed. There's our credentials, if anybody want to know who was on the committee and why we was on the committee. They say I talk fast, so if you need me to slow down, let me know. I was born and raised in Panama City. I don't know why people say that, but anyway, I'm not gonna read everything on the slide because I think everybody in the room can read. If you have a question, you can ask me the question, I'll give you the answer as best of my ability. As I said before, we went through every inch of the charter, went line by line. And then we had a red line addition reviewed by the lawyer, which was the attorney for the city. He also was attorney for our committee. And then what we did was, each item on the charter, we went over it. And each time we went over one, we voted at the end of that session. If we went over paragraph 1, item 1, we voted. Everyone on the committee voted item 1, paragraph 1. So it wasn't just done by any means other than the professional way it should have been done. We also had public there, and we asked the public if they wanted to speak each item before we vote on each item. Once we voted, the notes was taken by Ms. Holliday. She kept them. And at the end, the next meeting, I signed the meetings from the meeting previous, and then it goes into the public view for anyone in the city. It was online, each meeting we had. We had 8 meetings. Sad to say, we had a lot of people talking about the charter, wanting to change the charter, but we don't have 4 citizens show up at the meetings. One meeting we have 2, one meeting we have 3. Overall, we have 4 people that was non-member of our committee showed up for those meetings. It was public acknowledged. It was advertised by the city online, and anybody that wanted to come could have came. We had participation from the citizens. They could say what they want to say for 2 minutes. That was the rule I set forward. Of course, I was selected as the president of the committee, and that's the way I chose to do it, and that's the way we did it. Now, after reviewing everything, we came up with 8 proposals that we want to send to a referendum. I'm here to present those 8 proposals to you, and you as a commissioner will say yea or nay whether we send them to Mark Anderson and get them on a special election to change our charter. Reference to question number 1. You can see as it reads, it talks about a 5-year, every 5 years reviewing our charter. People that have been in Lynn Haven more than 10 or 20 years know that the charter hadn't been reviewed. And last time someone tried to review the charter, it was done by the commissioners, not by the citizens. So this one, we decided if every 5 years we put the commissioners put together a committee every 5 years to review the charter, we won't go 30 years and then have a problem. Somebody say, why don't we change this in the last 30 years? So we're recommending that you vote to have it changed every 5 years. The committee will get together, you have new commissioners on possibly, then you can change that. And you can say, okay, I want another citizen to represent me at that time. And you'll, like you did before, you'll select a committee and they'll go over the charter again in 5 years. Any questions?
Yeah. Question I have is, if you're appointing them every 5 years, that means the 6 years when it's going to get on the ballot for any changes, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
But the commissioners are elections every 4 years. So you'll have new ideas and new people come in. That's why we pick the year 5 instead of year 3 or 4.
I'm just making sure it's not every 5 years where it's an off year that actually falls in line when they have elections.
Yes.
Since it's every 2 years. All right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that was my not my question exactly, but I didn't know how you guys came up with the 5 years. Would it not have been easier to interpret if we did something like every census, that we changed that, which is every 10 years, but
We could
just
use,
how do you come up with 5, I guess?
we could use that, but we have an election every 4 years, so we want to make sure we have new ideas and new people come
I see,
in.
okay,
He may want somebody this year, and then next year, who will replace him might want somebody else after the next election.
okay, so you're
That's
saying
why we did
because the
every 5
commission
years.
is 4 years, then y'all just went a year after, okay.
Yes,
I got
sir.
you.
Yes,
That's
sir.
all.
To have new ideas and new brains, new people looking at it.
Got you.
Any other question on that issue? Now, the reason we did this also was last time the commissioners came up with the idea to put on the referendum to get them passed. It was all or nothing. We're trying to do this so we can have some may pass, some may not pass, but we want the citizen to have an option. I'm not just voting on a blank slate. Item number 2. This is a new item. I want y'all to read it first, and then we'll discuss this. The city of Lynn Haven have never proposed or had a term limit in the charter. Recent things happened in the city in the last 4 to 8 years, so we thought it'd be a nice idea is not to have the same people leading the city over a long period of time. So if you read this, it tells you that you can do a 4-year term twice. That's a total of 8 years. Any partial year would not count. Such as Mayor Nelson came in to finish out Mayor Anderson's term, that's a partial term. If he get elected next time, he'll be his first 4 year, and then he can do another 4 year. All right, after that 8-year term, if the mayor decides he want to run for commissioner, he can run for commissioner for 4 years and do 2 terms at that. The maximum you can do is 16 years in the city as a leader. And that's how we came about that plan, to keep from having stagnant leadership, whether they're good or whether they're bad. Sooner or later, they got to move. We have seen in the county, we have seen in the country that some leaders get in position and they try to stay there forever. And they're as old as some of their ideas, and we want to have new ideas and new elevation in the city of Lynn Haven. So we want a constant movement of good people in and out of government. Anybody have a question about that?
Question. My question would be, would it be when we pass this? When are you looking at? I guess actually that term being enacted. For example, Commissioner Ward came in. This is his first elected term.
Yes,
If that's passed, would it then be he gets 2 more 4-year terms, or would this term actually be his first 4-year term? Since it's actually it would be passed during his term, and then the next term would be his second 4-year term for his 2 4-year terms as commissioner.
I think when we get, go ahead. You say,
No, it's a good question.
oh,
That's a good question, because that means
yeah, that's,
12.
I'm going to turn it over to the attorney, but I believe as soon as we get this, if the referendum passes, it'll be in effect at that time. Is that correct?
Right, yeah, that's a good question. We did not discuss the, effective date. I mean, obviously it depends if it's adopted. Yeah, but I would agree. I would think it would go into effect. And so if you're in the middle of a term, I mean, that counts. So it wouldn't be 12 years. It wouldn't be grandfathered.
So I'm not good for another 8 years once this passes, is what you're telling me?
Mayor.
You ain't made the first 4 yet, but besides the 4, no. So, well, if it passes, this referendum passes, and the voters say, yes, that's what we want to do, then whoever's in office now, that'll be your first term.
So it'd be only, the ones that are currently in be good for just 2 terms if this passes.
Yes, sir.
Correct. Yeah, you would count.
2 terms of 4, yes, sir.
Okay.
And then if you really love this, what you're doing, you can run for mayor next time, and then you can keep that for 8 years, if you choose to do so.
It's not much of a salary increase.
We'll get to that also. Any other question on this item? Question number 2. Yes, sir.
Did you have any questions from the public on this one?
Any questions? Yes, sir.
Ryan Scray, Missouri Avenue. So on the same topic of when it goes into effect, for example, Commissioner Tinder's already completed 1 term. Now she's in her 2nd term. So would, in effect, would she be able to eventually run for 2 more terms or only 1 more term as commissioner? So she could have effectively 3 terms as commissioner and then 2 more as mayor. So for a total of 5 terms in the city.
No.
No, that's what we're saying. It would be,
So it would be retroactive of any other terms they've already completed.
except the committee did not discuss it, but yeah, unless we add some qualifying language.
Yeah.
So basically, this is her last term if this passes.
Well, I'm just wondering because that's like a, like if they already completed a term and it only goes into effective of the current term, do we just forget about the fact that she already had a term? I don't even know if you want to run again, but just asking, is it 5 terms or is it really just 4 terms?
The committee's intent was for 8 years lifetime as a commissioner and 8 years lifetime as a mayor. Right. That's the extent of that discussion.
The mayor is a mayor commissioner, 50% commissioner, 50% mayor. Why don't you split the term up that way?
Any other comments?
I just want to make sure one
Yes,
thing.
ma'am.
I'm going to ask you this.
Go ahead.
So just to make this real simple. So I could run for, I'm in my 2nd term, okay? So when that 2nd term is up, can I run for mayor for
Yes,
2
ma'am.
terms as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other question on this issue?
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
Corey has
Someone
one.
else? Come on, sir.
First of all, thanks for all the work you guys have done doing this. I was curious as far as the committee was concerned. What thought process was put forth towards the adding the term limits, specifically to about exhausting the pool of talent within Lynn Haven? Would we get to a point to where we don't have valuable commissioners to vote for because those individuals have since ran out of their term limits? So we've lost the pool of talent, or we've exhausted the pool of talent that we have. And then secondly, or kind of a sub question to that would be, as these commissioners serve more and more terms, they get smarter and smarter, just like Commissioner Warwick has mentioned in previous commission meetings. So are we in fact, by adding term limits, specifically for the commissioners more than the mayors, but by adding term limits to a commissioner, are we losing that knowledge on the executive level of the city by doing that? And if so, how did the commission, what was the committee's mitigating factors in doing that with adding this?
I can partially answer that, but I can't exactly answer that because I'm only one person on the committee. I could ask the rest of them, I can get in their head. But the idea is, in the military or the law enforcement, you can only do so long and then you have to get out because of your physical condition or because you were just worn out. So we, in the military, rotate. Every time you get a promotion, you go to a new unit, you do another assignment. Same thing with the commissioners. You lose experience, but you gain a younger person that can gain the knowledge. Having experience is good for a time being, and then that experience becomes stagnant because it don't have new ideas and new things. Lynn Haven citizens will be evolving. Every year, people move into Lynn Haven, people move out of Lynn Haven, whether they die or whether they just move. So we will always have a better pool to choose from, because if we keep the same people in position, then we can never get good leadership, a new leadership, because we don't know what ideas they may have. So each time a new citizen comes to Lynn, they have the possibility of being on the commission, and they may have never been here before. So that's why we chose to put a term limit on it. It wasn't just about experience. It was about the city as a whole. Yes, ma'am.
Also, please remember that their terms are staggered so that everybody's not going to go off at the same time. So terms are staggered so the new commissioners actually learn from the commissioners that have been here. I think that was some of the process behind it. If I remember correctly, Ms. Parker was one of the ones that talked a lot about that. And so you know, they had a lot of discussion on that. And so one of the things we did talk about was terms are staggered such that you can merge those two together.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, sir.
I understand what the gentleman's saying. He's right. But the problem is, you know, if we had good people on the commission, you know, the saying goes, if we're not happy with what they're doing, then you vote them out. But the problem with that statement is we can't get enough people to come out and vote. And if that was the case, we probably wouldn't be having this discussion.
In our demographic, we have a limited amount of people that actually even want to serve as a commissioner. You know?
Right.
But that's
So
honestly, I think about a guy like you. I mean, you're younger, or you know, you could be on this commission for a while and serving well. You know what I mean? I wouldn't want to see someone like in your, you know, in your window of time to only have 8 years when you can probably do 12.
Right.
You know? I'm not either way. You know, however it's worded is fine, but I hate to see a talented individual have to step off and just because of a rule.
Excuse me.
Well, he's only 3 years younger than you, Pat.
They don't.
Excuse me.
I'm a fine wine.
I hate to.
I may not be able to walk out of here by the time we're done.
I'm about to say
he's way younger than me.
I hate to bust y'all bubble, but what this is presenting a proposal to you.
Oh yeah.
Your commissioner's going to be able to go over this in your own and talk about it.
We're all thrown out the what ifs.
I understand, but we have a time limit for another meeting. You have, you know, multiple meetings lined up. I didn't schedule this.
Can I address
ma'am.
the gentleman's
ahead.
comments too? In the past, we've had commissioners that have been on the commission so long, they literally have slept through an entire meeting like this. And I'm not kidding. That's not a joke. It's really true. And I also believe that.
Quit talking about me like that, Jude.
I know. Well, you look like you're awake. But I mean but I also believe that no matter how good one becomes or, you know, learns how to deal with the city, that after 8 years, I just can't help but to believe that you wouldn't become complacent. Yeah. And not to mention, and I'm certainly not pointing any fingers, but we've also had commissioners that, you know, use it to their own benefit, to their personal benefit. And I think having term limits is a good thing personally. That would be my vote, because it keeps that from happening as well. Anyway, thank you.
Air Force personnel, the exception, though.
Only to the government. Is that we finished with that item? I want to move to item number 3, which the mayor mentioned earlier, was compensation. I'd like for y'all to take a minute and read that because some of y'all might have a problem with it. In the past, commissioners have set their own compensation, and we as a committee decided that we should set it for you the same as it is for all the citizens in the community.
So is this based on the CPI index?
Read it.
I did. It said cost of living adjustment, but.
Same thing.
CPI
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's according to whatever the city employees get that year, what percentage they get will be tied to your compensation. They don't get one, you don't get one. We can't afford it. Can't be put in the budget. We can't pay it. That's all that's saying. But what it's going to do is it's going to set your standard. The mayor will get $1,500 a month. City commissioners will get $1,250 a month if this passes. That's all they're saying. And from here henceforward, it's up to the cost of living allowance that the government passes out. Is what you will get.
My only thought on that one.
Excuse me, sir?
I said my only thought on that one is that those numbers make sense right now.
Yes, sir.
You know, if we're putting it in the charter, it's like putting it in the Constitution. So it's going to take a literal act of Congress to get it back out of the charter again. What if, let's say 20 years from now, we're 3 times the size in population and your commissioners are still getting paid the same thing as they were 30 years before or whatever? That's going to be a disincentive.
No, sir. If you go back to the first one I had on there, you have a charter review every 5 years. So if it needed changing, the charter review would catch that every 5 years instead of waiting 20 years
Very well.
to catch up with the pay and change it. It may go down in 5 years because city may be bankrupt, you know. So that's why we want to have a review every 5 years instead of every 30 years. Yes, ma'am. Oh, you're talking about? I saw that symbol. I didn't know what that means. Anyone else have a question about that idea of commissioner's pay?
Mr. Scray,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Scray had a
Go ahead,
question
sir.
for
Come
you.
up. You get ready to pocket.
So just to clarify, so it's tied to the same CPI, essentially, or cost of living increase that the city employees are getting, but aren't some of the city employees getting specific amounts that are tied to their performance? Or is it a lot like, say, the military and the VA benefits where it's just a flat percentage for everybody?
No. So you're talking about merit checks. They're talking about COLAs. That happens at the beginning of the year. Everyone gets that regardless. That's a cost of living increase. And so that would be the same thing for commissioners. That's exactly right. Mhm.
Any other
Any
question?
from the public? Yes, sir.
Again, thanks. I think you guys are on the right track, but that little nugget that you said every 5 years there's a charter review, I would standardize that, or rather, I would mandate that process be evaluated under a standardized process every 5 years. In other words, some other charter review may come 5 years and they may just gloss right over this. No, it's a requirement that this be evaluated against the cost index every 5 years and adjusted accordingly, either up or down, so we don't lose that.
I agree with you, because even though we do have the charter review committee every 5 years, most citizens aren't going to vote to give a politician a pay raise. Let's be honest. They're going to say they can go, screw, it's my taxes, and I understand that. So I think it should be mandatory to have to review inflation and everything else that's happened over the 5 years.
They're trying to write it down right now. He's gonna make an amendment to this, and then
We're paying him to do it.
Miss Holiday also get writing it down. You get what he said? Okay.
Any additional?
Anyone else on this issue? If not, I'd like to move forward, please. Referendum suggestion number 4, background checks, department heads, public officials. Read that and let me know what you think about it. We went back and forth about this for a while. Matter of fact, it was 2 meetings to take care of this issue. As I stated before, we have a number of different people from different parts of the community. Each time we came up with an item as hard as this, we took a break and I told them to go talk to their friends and neighbors, come up with ideas what they think it need to be included or excluded. We want to make sure that the city manager and all the leadership department heads do a background check required by the charter, because of what happened years ago. And everybody want to correct that before it happens again.
Now, what's included in a level 2 background screening?
Chief, you want to answer that? Number 2 background check? What's included on number 2 background check?
That's fingerprinting. Level 2 is going to be fingerprinting. You'll go to the NCIS and the FC.
Excuse me? Yeah, it's a standard report that they do.
What
They do fingerprint, then they do, you're gonna do.
Right. And that's what I'm asking, what is a level 2, so all of us can understand, because
the level 2 background screening is when you go get fingerprinted, and then they run it through the NCIS, the national database, and the state one.
Because some background checks, even with the fingerprinting,
it's a criminal record check, right?
Got it. Because I've done some background checks where it's only for Bay County, and they've done the criminal background, they've done all of that. So I'm asking, so everybody will be clear on that this is basically a national,
national,
national background check.
Yeah. And they did discuss elected officials, but we ran that by Mark Anderson, and obviously they do that stuff already, to see if you're even eligible, to be on the ballot. So if you're a felon, you can't vote, you can't be on there. So, and Vicky had mentioned she's already doing background checks anyway, so really they're just putting it in the charter, so a manager can't change that later.
Any questions from the public?
That was good with you? Okay. We'll move on to item 5. Referendum item 5. It's about unexcused absence from the commission meeting.
Now, I thought there was already a penalty in the charter for unexcused absences by the city commission.
Ordinance.
It's an ordinance, but not a charter.
Ordinance.
Okay.
Okay.
I thought there was too.
Yeah, it was an ordinance, but it's not a charter, so we're gonna put it in the charter to make sure everything tied together. And when it's in the charter, then it has teeth. If it's the ordinance, you ain't necessarily got to enforce it.
I think that's a
That's been
good.
I
happening
mean,
around- that's been happening around the world.
I'm confused on that one, so that means we don't have to enforce our ordinances.
The ordinance, you guys obviously could amend at any point in time. The charter, the people have to amend it.
Okay, got it. So now once this goes into, if this goes into the charter, then what will we do with the ordinance? Then will we just rescind the ordinance at that point, or what will we do with it?
It's fine to have the ordinance out there it's consistent with.
Okay.
It's consistent language. If it was inconsistent, we would do an amendment, but it says the same thing.
Now, is there any determination for what an unexcused absence is? I mean, I think that's been a little
No, and I've seen
elusive.
this in other cities, and basically, it's somebody calls in, the mayor will say, hey, so-and-so, you make a motion to excuse, Brandon, and you just do that.
So you have to vote on it.
Yeah, we saw this back, we were here, Judy and Pat, we saw this back before.
It's a good practice.
Yeah,
to excuse them.
and the mayor just basically said, hey, do we excuse Commissioner so-and-so?
Right.
And they say yes or no, and that's it.
Yeah, it's not
I think this is a great one too,
pretty informal.
because we've had commissioners that have missed a lot of meetings, and they're collecting their $1,000 a month, whether they're here or not. So.
Yes, ma'am, I understand. Anyone else have anything to say about that item?
3 years.
Anybody on the committee? All right, we'll move to the next one. Referendum number 6. It's wordy, but it says a little. But we have to put a lot of words on to make it understandable.
Kind of like we do now.
Yeah.
It's just like we do.
And this is in line with the resolution that you guys did earlier.
Is
The
it?
original language just said appoint one of your own to serve in the mayor's absence. So now we actually put, Mayor Pro Tem. The committee actually put Mayor Pro Tem in the charter and has the same language as the resolution. You rotate it, 1 year at a time.
I thought we voted on rotating around where it started with Commissioner Alt. So this will do that?
We did. It happened in every May of every year. Before you start the next calendar year, you would pick a new mayor pro tem, and he would go 1 year into the next May, and then another mayor pro tem. In the absence of the mayor, the pro tem will automatically be the person that was assigned in May, and they'll go into the next
But
May.
it's not an actual rotation. It could be the same person.
No, I'm telling you, you can only do it once in your term, in your 4-year
that's
term.
right.
That's why I said read it, Air Force.
Yeah.
That does. say that.
It'll say no commissioner may serve as mayor pro tem more than once during a 4-year term. So you'll go in.
Yeah, like right now, Pat is Mayor Pro Tem. He took over in May.
So it's going to go in order, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
Yeah, because we're already in.
And no one can turn down their slot. If it's your time to be mayor pro tem, you have to be mayor pro tem. You'll be
So-
appointed in May, and you're going to the next May.
So I can miss 2 meetings and let Commissioner Perno.
Only if your
run the
meetings,
meeting.
only if you miss them excused. If you miss them unexcused.
Well, that's what the 3rd meeting. I'll be back by the 3rd meeting.
I'll be right there.
Right.
Well,
Do I have
you-
any questions on that?
We'll excuse you every meeting then, right?
Anything from the public on that?
I guess one question is in regards to the language of appointing like a interim city manager, or deputy manager, and they're trying to follow that language there as well in that.
Because if the city manager is absent and you don't have a assistant city manager, then the commission will appoint a city manager. That's what they're saying.
And
Because
also-
right now, the city manager don't have an assistant. She have an assistant, but she don't have an assistant city manager. It's not started as that. It's got to be in the budget, got to be in the charter. We don't have an assistant city manager. The commission itself will appoint a city manager in the absence of the city manager.
Got it.
And then it says in the absence of a department head, if that department don't have a second in that department, the city manager can represent that department as a department head temporarily
Okay.
until she hires somebody to be department head of that department.
And that is already in the charter.
I guess my only really concern with this one is there's a lot to follow here, and I'm worried that the voters might see all this and just be like, I don't know what the heck this is. No, I've seen that happen when I lived out in Colorado. There was a lot better voter education on amendment items like this or referendum questions like this, where they would send out information saying, this is what's current, this is why we need to change it, this is what it's being changed to. In this one in particular, I'd be concerned that people are going to see that and be like, there's too much to follow. I don't know why this is needed. Just vote no on it. When clearly it's something that's needed.
And I think the Charter Review Committee had talked about maybe doing
Yes.
something like that. So we would we hadn't really discussed it at this point, but that was something that the Charter Review Committee would actually do, and not necessarily us as the commission, as far as the education part of it.
Yes.
So there will be another workshop once we determine what will go on the ballot. Then there'll be a workshop by the Charter Review Committee to educate the public on what's actually going on the ballot itself.
And that was a concern with Ms. Jerry. She actually had that concern of citizens not being aware, of citizens not being knowledge. So she was, Ms. Jerry was actually wanted to make sure everybody get knowledgeable of what we're doing instead of just putting out all this, like I said, literature. We want to give them background information on how it was, what we're trying to change, and why we're trying to change it to make it understandable.
George,
Yes,
did you guys discuss maybe even adding an assistant city manager to the charter? Did you guys discuss that? You did?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We discussed-
What was the consensus on that? Just not voted for, okay? Because I know some of the other cities have assistant city managers in their charter. Panama City has two, I believe, assistant city
Only
managers.
big cities like Panama City got two of them, but most of them just have one.
I'm not sure if it's in the charter. I mean, we can have what you guys as a commission could.
Yeah, y'all can
create
make
the position.
Yeah, y'all can create the position, but we can't as a
They didn't
charter.
want to make it an actual charter office.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Any other questions? If not, I move to item 7. Clarification of the returns from elections. Read that, Mr. Ward.
This just clarifies what's actually been happening for as long as I can remember. The charter was outdated, especially on, it used to say you would have to go the day after the election at noon or something like that and have a meeting. We don't even get the returns back from Mark Anderson's office until probably that Friday after the Tuesday. So this just, that's what we've been doing. If you remember, we'd wait till the next regular meeting before you swear everybody in. So this just brings it up to what we've been doing in reality. And the first part is, again, same thing. If everybody drops off, all but one drop off the ballot, that person gets put in. So this is really just bringing some old outdated language up to date.
Anything from you? Yes, sir. Oh, I mean, you can't.
This wouldn't change the actual election date of an unopposed candidate at all, would it? They would be still elected as of the date of the election?
Right.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Just to win the election unopposed, if everybody drop out.
Right.
That's what that means. Any other item? Anybody else got a question on that? Last but not least, item number 7, referendum question. We had a question about verbiage in the charter, words and languages, and he and she and them, those, and all that was talked about, and we came to an understanding that he is human being, mankind, It's not she, it's not he, and not she. You know, it's universal.
It's,
So that's what we was talking about, the grammar
it's person.
in the charter. Person. Yeah.
So is that a legal term? He is person?
It's a biblical term.
It's a biblical term. It's in the Bible. You don't see she in the Bible.
That was our last committee meeting.
That's what we talked
They were going
about.
to take out.
Well, I mean,
they were going to take out all the gender stuff and make it
Gender
he or
specific.
she or they
Yeah.
or whatever. And the last one was that,
but I mean legally, when they refer to he, they mean
oh, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah. So
person.
that could be any person.
Okay.
Anyone else?
And the rest of it's getting rid of the here 2 4s and here thithers and all that stuff. So this is just the general catch-all, clean up all the grammar question.
Anyone from the public? Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say it doesn't sound like anybody here has an objection to that, but you're going like this. If anybody who isn't here has a problem with that, I mean, that's actually correct. That's what I was taught. That's correct English, that he, if you don't know the gender, you just say he. So I just want to put that out there.
No other comments? So as I first mentioned when I came up here.
George,
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Hines.
Yes, sir.
So did you guys talk about the election process as far as rank order voting at all?
No, sir.
Not at all. Didn't come up?
That's your northern trick you're trying to pull around here. No, we didn't talk about that. But you can bring it up anytime you want to as a commission meeting.
Well, it's a null deal now because of what the state passed, but I just wondering if you guys talked about it. So, and the other question I had is, how many residents, I know you don't have an exact number, but approximately how many residents actually showed up to the charter committee meetings and gave input?
Well, where have you been? When I first started, I said we had 4 citizens that's not on the committee showed up. Mr. Walker, her, and 2 other ladies came at different times.
I just want to make sure.
It was open to the public, like I
I know,
said. We
I
had it
get
online.
that.
We
I
had
just,
it.
that's all I need to know.
It was
All
3.
right, we can't make them come. We invite them. They don't show up. It's not our fault. But yes, sir. Go ahead. That's not my job. True.
I mean, if we
Mr.
even,
Walker. Mr. Walker, I say the same thing about the city commission meeting. Why half the citizens, 90% of the citizens not in the city commission meeting? Because they get dominated by a certain group of people and everybody else think they don't need to show up. That's why. That's my opinion. You got yours, I got mine, everybody else got theirs. Yes, sir.
I mean, I can only speak on behalf of myself. It was at Thursdays at 3. That's a time frame that just doesn't work for me. I don't expect a board to cater to me. I followed along with the notes. I contacted various board members to try to find out what they had talked about, give my inputs. But as far as everybody else not showing up, I mean, a lot of people can say it was in the middle of the workday. Maybe if it was in the evening, we would have got 3 or 4 more. But I think the truth is apathy. There's a big problem with apathy in a lot of cities across America. We're not immune to it. People are not wanting to spend their time on this stuff when they got 100 other issues to deal with.
Commissioner Ward.
So I had 0 people come to me and say, hey, I'd come, but if you had it at a later time. And if I had people that came to me, I would have pushed for that. But I didn't have anybody that, I don't know if you guys did, but I didn't have anybody that came up to me, and I would have been more than happy to fight for that. So,
But as it relates to time, let's be clear so the public will know we as the commission not determined the time for the meeting. That was a time that the review committee actually determined for themselves. So citizens of our city determined that that day and time was the best for them to meet. And so it wasn't, just want to be clear for the record that we as the commission did not determine the day and time that that meeting happened. That was actually the committee themselves.
Did you guys talk about runoff elections at all, as opposed to just whoever's got the most votes? You didn't talk about that either?
No, sir. Yeah, we talked about we decided in the at the hearing. What we was trying to do, like I said before, we came up with 8 votable items that we thought the citizens would want to have passed, because last time we came up with more than 8, they didn't pass. So we're trying to cut down. Maybe the next committee will come up with 20. We don't know.
Right.
But our idea was to make it concise and complete for the items that we chose to make our questions, and that's what we did.
Yeah, and
That's what y'all appointed us for.
and I think because I was able to attend 1 or 2 of the meetings, and they probably had 20 things that they wanted to change. But the reality of it was, okay, if we put 20 things on the ballot, as Mr. Scray alluded to earlier, are people actually going to vote on these 20 things? And so then they went back to say, what are 8 things that we can actually think that are actionable that the
You
citizens
don't want to
will?
saturate it. I get it.
Yeah. So, but in 5 years, that'll be the time. If the 5 years has passed, then that'll be the time for that committee to review other things that could have been, suggested. They go back and review the minutes and see what was discussed, and maybe some other issues that could be addressed within the charter itself.
Mayor, a couple of things too. In terms of advertising the meetings, those meetings were advertised. They were up on Facebook. They were on our website. I would mention them at Table Talk. I know Commissioner Warwick would mention them at his meetings. I know Mayor Nelson did it at his meetings. And so we tried very hard to get people out. I think when it's important, whether you like the way a meeting is run or not, you're there. And that's the most important thing. Secondly, in terms of getting the word out for the election, one of the things that we did talk about is the committee is maybe going to give us some suggestions, the city, some suggestions, and then we will put together a small campaign to make sure everybody understands what they're voting on and when the vote takes place. We'll put some money into the budget. We already have an election line item anyway, and so we'll put some additional money in the budget for advertising and marketing, making sure we get the right word out. And I think that's part of it, is making sure everybody understands and getting the right word out. And I know this committee talked a lot about that. They didn't want people to be confused. So maybe if it came from the charter committee to the city to push out, then everyone would be on the same page.
Are there any
Anything
additional
else?
questions? Questions from the commission?
Yes, ma'am. Come on.
I just have a comment, kind of going back to the number of candidates that will run. I think that last time, if I remember correctly, we had 3 or 4 people running for each office that was available. So hopefully having qualified candidates run for positions won't be such a problem. And I guess if it did get to be a problem, then in the 5-year, the charter committee could review that and, maybe make some changes. But hopefully as more people move here, you're going to have good people wanting to run for office. The other comment is going back to what Ryan said and Mr. Hines said about apathy. I agree with some of that. I think that sometimes there's a timing issue. I'm going to say something later about a lady who can't leave her home. I mean, sometimes people are handicapped, older, whatever reason. I know that Ryan and I are both, we feel like getting information out to people is really important. Not everybody's going to come, and a lot of people don't like speaking in public either, so that's kind of a problem sometimes. But I think that, having meetings accessible, having transparency, like what happened today, I really appreciate, all this information that came out. I think making times available. I know Panama City does that. They have multiple charrettes, multiple meetings on different things. They have the manager talks every Monday morning about what's going on. So if somebody came up and tried to say, I didn't know about X, Y, and Z, and they tried to get upset about it, then the city manager can say, well, where were you? We had this meeting, this meeting, this meeting. So if you make things available to people, people don't really have anything to complain about. Or if they do, they don't have a leg to stand on. So just saying that.
All right. Any additional comments, questions?
If not, I'd like to conclude by saying thank you to the people that worked on the committee. And I hope that other citizens get their chance to work on the committee to represent the city, because we need everyone's idea, not just a small group of people's idea. And that's why I told the people on the committee to talk to their friends and neighbors so we have a conglomerate of different ideas to put together with these 8 items. Now, you as a commissioner have the job of taking these 8 items and massaging them however you want to do it, and either say yay or nay, and turn that back over to us, and we can give it to the city and let the city know what's coming up. I appreciate your time, and that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, like, you know, the process would be, like we did last, you would actually have to do an ordinance to set out the ballot questions. So obviously, we'll need to have some more city commission meetings to discuss what you guys want to put in there, and then do an ordinance, and we'll get it. Normally, you want it by January to the supervisor's office to get it on the ballot.
All right, sounds good. All right. Anything else from the commission?
Mayor, I also would just like to echo those sentiments, and I know we all feel the same way on this board. We know, because we're on a board ourselves, that it could be a thankless job, and it takes time, you know, away from your personal schedule and other things to serve your community. So I also want to thank the entire board that got together and met. It's appreciated, and I'm thankful for you guys and your service.
I don't know, Pat made me feel good earlier, so I'm full now.
You can go home if you like. I mean, you have an excuse absence next week.
You're just a young buck.